Let's look at using Bootstrap to stylize horizontal forms. First off, let's see what a horizontal form looks like. Here we have the same employee form we've been working with, and you can see that the labels are on the left side and the fields are on the right side. The labels are right aligned, so you can see department juts out farther to the left. And this is responsive, so as we shrink it down, you can see that it becomes a vertical form again when we get to the small size. And then as the browser gets bigger, it becomes horizontal again. So let's look at what it takes to do this. There's a form-horizontal class that we need to place on the form itself. And this is what's responsible for making everything appear in rows, with the label to the left and the field to the right. Next, we're going to need to stylize the label. So we're going to need to add the class control-label on our input fields. And we're also going to have to use Bootstrap's 12-column grid. For the form we just saw, I'm using a column small 3 for the label on the left side and a column small 9 for the input fields on the right side. And just to recap a little bit about the grid system and CSS classes, the SM stands for small, which is the breakpoint between, say, a smartphone and a larger browser window. So when it hits that small breakpoint, it'll just revert back into a regular vertical form. So let's add these classes to our form now. So our form is in eftemplate.html, and the first thing we'll do is we'll add a class to the form element. So we added the class form horizontal, and when we run it, we can see nothing happened. Next we'll add classes to the label for full name. So I added the class for the grid. It'll take up 3 columns in the grid. And we're also adding the control label field to style it as a control label. So we have our label showing up in the right place. Now it's a matter of getting the field to show to the right of it. We're going to wrap the input within a div. And we'll give that div a class of column small 9. And 3 plus 9 is 12, so that'll fully take up the page in the 12-column grid. So we get the name along with the name field, and it takes up the full width. If we check to see if it's responsive, it's good. As we hit that breakpoint for the small size, it becomes vertical again, and that's fine. So I'm going to go through this entire form, and I'll add the classes for the grid columns along with control label, and the grid columns for the input elements as well. So looking at our next field, the text area, it follows the exact same pattern. We add the same classes to the label, and we wrap our text area in a div with column small 9. We also do this for the select tag below. We set up our classes on the label, and we wrap the select within a div with the class of column small 9. Now things get a little bit different for the checkboxes and radio buttons and the submit button. If we run this and take a look at it first off, we can see it looks good. And whether you want the perks and the payroll type to be labels on the left side, or if you want them vertically like this, it's just a matter of preference. I prefer them like this, but if you wanted them lined up on the left, you would just add the control label like you did on these fields. So looking at the markup for this, these are our perks checkboxes, and I added a column small 3 inside of an empty div just to make sure that there was nothing in the label area. And then the rest of the checkboxes get put inside this div, which has a column width of 9. And the same pattern for the checkboxes was followed for the radio buttons. There's an empty div that takes up 3 grid columns, and then all of the radio buttons along with the header are put in 9 columns. And I just added the submit button to the end there. So those are the Bootstrap classes you need in order to create these horizontal forms. And again, they're still responsive. As we shrink down the browser, everything gets lined up vertically again.